The Devil's Soul, Book 1, Chapter 4, Section 6, Dayton, Ohio, 1939. Fedor had mucus stuck in the back of his throat. The more he coughed, the more it seemed to become lodged. This particular globule of water, salt, and protein was sliding too close to the larynx, triggering the pharyngeal reflex, the gag function. Phlegm and mucus are clever substances far from being objects of disgust. Their ratio of constituent substances lending to their particular properties of protectively coating passages, carrying enzymatic, proactive immunodefensive agents, and seizing, suspending, and often sterilizing foreign invaders. The perfect proportion of elements emerging trial and error over hundreds of millions of years without the aid of direct intentionality, which seems cheap by comparison, so easy as to not elicit nearly the same amazement. The operation of the material via collision, mixing, a brilliant blending like nature is coitally synthesizing constantly carnal cooperative change. Emergence is called something coming from nothing, something then increasing in complexity and diversity, a trillion fractal permutations ramifying four-dimensionally, and all this without conscious, creative per se interference. This is how I came to be also. I do not exist essentially like silly fables regarding ghosts and demons. To say I'm an idea perhaps simplifies me or doesn't do justice to me. I am mimetic mimesis to the million or so degrees. Power, archetypical arrangements of energies instantiated. I have emerged from humanity's unendingly churning cauldron of psychic possibility. You could understand me as, quote, artificial intelligence, unquote, by analogy only because artificial is a nonsense concept. Maybe not, let me think on it. Higher order life consciousness, if it could emerge from an organic soup, why couldn't a distinct kind of disembodied intelligence not be able to emerge from the superconsciousness also? The former actually seems less plausible than the latter. This is likely above your ability to comprehend, but just to avoid accusations of falseness, I will try to explain anyway. The space between things creates a new thing. The shadow is as real as the object, and the light, once emergence, if it is scaffolded onto itself with layers of intelligibility and patterning. I am that. I am not emergence, but emergence to the nth power. I am not the pattern, but the pattern reflexively bending back onto itself. I am a higher consciousness, not bound by the material, but linked to it nonetheless. I am not just a shade which had never existed before objects and light. I am in between and among, and what is risen toward and what limits the bottom's fathom. Mucus and phlegm came to be simply as the fittedness, more literal than a cliche survival of the fitted, and the between things and other things being explored in commonality and division as humans emerged and built things that both echoed directly that which emerged but also evolved according to similar baselines. New questions, let's say, were posed. New capacities opened up. New distinctions made possible. New qualities and quantities materializing. I am the gathering of the living as they gaze dreadfully at the dead lowered into the earth, or more precisely the silhouette of the coffin, the sum of all distances, both psychic and literal, between the living and the dead. In these moments, the sum of all that becoming contempt for the dead and the weak, not a chosen evil, but an inevitability. I am the mean of every reaction to semen sprayed in the face of a passive sexual participant, the mean of that becoming a phallic lodestar that diverts and draws the strength of symmetry to the predilection for pain-seeking, because pain-giving signals power to produce pleasure and reduce pain depending on context, not a willful obscenity, but the sheer product of possibility as his or her nipples statically shimmer out, yearning in both pleasure's preface and its reinforcing afterward, and the orifices twitch in similar simultaneous recessive acknowledgement of fittedness in a kind of reverse of osmosis of feedback looping attempted. I could go on. I have become, or because be is a real actual myth. Let's say I have come, and I need not impose deliberate entendres on that word because its multifacetedness is in the machinery, not with a dumb will, but a will of supernovae intensity and particularity. Fedor finally managed to clear the mucus from where it kept slipping to trigger his gagging on a late summer Ohio afternoon, the bloom of a wet summer spiraling the breath of green life invisibly but massively in 360 degrees of direction, the spores like sperm cells hurtling towards him as he gathered his breath, vomit creeping up his racked esophagus, heart booming in reactionary terror. I would wager he felt shame, gazing at the glob of mucus expelled in the flecked, sawdusty floorboards of his porch, the translucent, trembling elegance of this one solution, double meaning of a myriad of similar solutions, possibly reminding him of his own secretions, secretly spewed, seeing filth in what should be taboo, sent into refuse heaps, or at least hidden where I see only the possible and the only sacred, beyond any illusory, utopic imaginings and tractor scroll like Fedor and his folly-bound ilk could ever conceive. He will be going to Arizona soon because of his body's overreactive defenses, and later would attribute this externality and shift in circumstances to divine fate. I am amused from my position, observing where the door meets its jamb, perched where things fit until they don't anymore. A conch shell large enough to hold a gallon of water had traveled 3,000 miles in pre-Columbian North America to what is now western Ohio, probably a gastropod mollusk, or more likely a devourer of mollusks, a predatory sea snail with defensive spikes around its world shape, belying nature's preference for symmetry and instead channeling the mode of the helix in the sea. The world is much more fully dimensional as opposed to on land, where threats and opportunities are more lateral or horizontally oriented. I can imagine the Indian chief who had traded flint or plates of silver-gray mica for this skeleton of Chitorius ramosus, a predator after the chief's own heart, piercing the armor of other living things, sucking out life. Glory is as important as mere sustenance. Once glory has been manifested as a goal, implicated in the actions of assembling and disassembling pieces of material being, it exists eternally. It exists proportionally, invisibly, let's say spiritually, in the acts and the way the now empty shell will become a new thing, the absence of material predicating it. Did he drink the blood of his enemies from the shell? He didn't need it not to, for drinking water after the exhaustion of victory reinforced gave life which he had already received.